Ethan had lived on the edge of the galaxy long enough to know that isolation had its own rhythm. The outpost where he worked, a small refueling station perched on a rocky moon, rarely saw more than a few passing ships each week. Its corrugated metal walls were battered by storms of cosmic dust and charged particles, but to Ethan, the quiet monotony had become a friend. He fixed ships, maintained life support systems, and spent his evenings staring at the stars, thinking about worlds he might never visit. It was a lonely life, but it was safe, and for a man who had grown tired of complications, safety was enough. That night, the storm had arrived with unusual intensity. A gray haze of charged particles rattled the station, and the lights flickered in response. Ethan moved carefully across the docking bay, checking the sensors for incoming ships. Everything seemed quiet except for a faint, almost imperceptible sound, a soft, irregular sobbing. At first, he assumed it was the storm, whispering through the corridors. But as he approached the cargo area, the sound grew clearer, more desperate. Someone was crying. Ethan froze. Visitors were rare, and unannounced arrivals were rarer still. He glanced toward the crate stacked against the far wall. The sobs were coming from there. His instincts told him to call security, but the station had no real security, and it was just him. Carefully, he moved closer, trying not to make a sound. Behind a stack of crates, he found her. At first, he could barely believe his eyes. She was small, maybe a little taller than a human woman, with silver-toned skin that seemed to shimmer under the dim light. Her eyes were enormous, reflecting the blue glow of the station lights, and her body trembled violently as she crouched against the wall. She was beautiful in a strange, alien way, and the sight of her crying alone stirred something protective in Ethan he had never felt before. Before he could speak, she flung herself toward him, clinging tightly to his arms. Her grip was strong, desperate and full of fear. Ethan was startled but instinctively wrapped his arms around her. The alien woman's sobs grew louder, almost shuddering through her entire body, and Ethan felt a strange weight of emotion pressing down on him. She kept repeating words he didn't understand, her voice high and urgent. Wait, I don't understand," Ethan said gently, holding her at arm's length but not letting go. He rubbed her back in slow circles, trying to calm her. She flinched at his touch at first, but then her grip tightened, as if she had decided he was the only person who could help her. After a few moments, he realized she had no weapon, no identification, no communicator. She was entirely alone, and from the panic in her eyes, she feared something terrible would happen if anyone found her. Ethan reached for the emergency blanket stored nearby and draped it around her shoulders. She flinched at the sudden movement but did not resist. "Here," he said softly. "Drink this." He offered her a small bottle of water. She accepted it shakily, taking tiny sips as if afraid it might poison her. Once she had calmed slightly, he carefully activated his translator device, a small gadget designed to pick up alien speech patterns and convert them into rough human phrases. "Who are you?" he asked. "Please, don't send me back," she whispered in broken English, her words trembling. Ethan frowned. "Back where?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she pressed herself closer to him, clinging as if the very act of letting go would mean certain doom. He realized then that she was terrified, not just of him, but of whoever or whatever she had escaped from. "Okay," Ethan said slowly, trying to calm himself as well as her. "You're safe here. I won't send you back, but I need to understand what's happening. Can you tell me your name?" "Lyra," she whispered, barely audible, still shivering. "Lyra? Okay, Lyra, I'm Ethan. You're safe. Can you tell me why you're here? Who's after you?" Lyra shook her head, hugging him tightly. Tears streaked down her shimmering cheeks. Her sobs were quiet now, but the fear remained. Ethan understood that forcing her to speak could make her panic again. He let her stay clinging to him, speaking softly, telling her about the station, the small comforts, the warmth of food, and how the storm would pass. Hours passed in silence, broken only by her quiet sobs and his gentle reassurances. Outside, the storm raged on, battering the station walls and shaking the floor. Ethan's mind raced. He knew from experience that anyone hiding from danger would have allies coming for them, or enemies. He checked the sensors constantly, but nothing appeared on the radar. Still, he could not shake the feeling that time was running out. Suddenly, a massive shadow fell across the docking bay's reinforced glass. A ship had landed outside. Ethan's heart sank. The craft was massive, armored and designed for military purposes. Armed figures began moving down the ramp, scanning the area with precise efficiency. It didn't take a genius to know they were searching for someone. And that someone was Lyra. Her grip on him tightened. She buried her face in his shoulder, and for the first time Ethan noticed the depth of fear in her eyes. He could almost hear her thoughts. If they found her, it would be the end. He stepped in front of her, trying to shield her from view. "What do they want?" she whispered. "I don't know," he admitted, keeping his voice low. "But I won't let them take you without a fight." The armored figures began methodically scanning the area, their suits glowing with faint light. One of them paused, scanning the floor, and Ethan realized with a chill that they might have already found traces of Lyra's presence. He needed a plan, and he needed it fast. "Follow my lead," Ethan whispered to Lyra. "Stay behind me. Do exactly as I do." Lyra nodded, her trust evident despite her terror. Ethan guided her behind a stack of crates as the guards approached. He raised his hands, pretending to inspect a nearby console. One of the guards paused near the crates, then moved on, apparently satisfied that the area was clear. Ethan exhaled slowly, relief flooding him, but he knew it was only temporary. They needed to move. The station had multiple exits, but all were exposed, and the storm made it impossible to leave without being noticed. Ethan scanned the area, thinking quickly. He remembered a maintenance hatch used for emergency repairs. It led to an underground service tunnel that exited several kilometers away from the station. "We're going to the service tunnel," he told Lyra. "It's not far, but we have to be careful." She nodded silently, still holding his arm tightly. Together they moved quietly, keeping to shadows and avoiding the main corridors. Every step was tense. Ethan could feel the presence of the approaching guards like a weight pressing down on him. He kept checking the translator, trying to pick up any words from Lyra that might help. She seemed unwilling to speak more, clutching him as if saying anything could endanger them both. Finally, they reached the maintenance hatch. Ethan pried it open and lowered a small ladder into the tunnel below. Lyra descended first, still gripping his arm, then he followed. The hatch closed silently behind them, sealing them in darkness. The tunnel was narrow and the sound of their footsteps echoed. Ethan held out a flashlight, the beam cutting through the dim metallic corridor. Lyra stayed close, her breathing shallow but steadying. After a few minutes of walking, Ethan dared to ask again, "You have to tell me why they're after you. I need to know what we're dealing with." She hesitated, then slowly spoke. I cannot go back. If they find me, it will not just be me. It will be war, death, everything. Gone." Her words were broken, but the meaning was clear. Ethan's mind raced. The stakes were higher than he imagined. He realized that protecting her was not just about a lone alien fleeing danger. It was about preventing a catastrophe. His small, quiet life had just become entangled in something much larger than he could have ever expected. They continued through the tunnel, the storm outside raging like a furious beast. Ethan felt a strange sense of resolve. Whatever Lyra's story, he would keep her safe. He didn't fully understand her world or the politics or the dangers ahead, but he knew this: she had trusted him, and he would not betray that trust. As the tunnel opened to the outside, Ethan looked up at the night sky. The storm had not abated, but in the distance he could see the faint lights of ships patrolling the perimeter. He knew the guards would not give up easily. They would search and they would come for her again. Lyra clung to him tightly, her face pressed against his chest. Ethan patted her back gently. "We'll find a way," he whispered. "We'll get through this." For the first time since she arrived, she seemed to believe him. Her grip loosened slightly, but she stayed close, as if the simple act of being near him was enough to keep the fear at bay. Ethan knew the journey ahead would be dangerous. He didn't know if they would survive the night or the following days or the enemies that were surely hunting them. But in that moment he understood something fundamental. Some bonds, forged in fear and trust, could not be broken by storms or warships or the unknown perils of the galaxy. And as they began moving silently across the rocky terrain, heading toward the distant lights of the next outpost, Ethan felt a strange mixture of fear and hope. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew he would not abandon Lyra. Not now. Not ever. For the first time in a long while, the quiet mechanic on a lonely moon felt that his life had meaning beyond routine repairs. He was no longer just fixing ships. He was protecting someone who had no one else, someone whose life and perhaps. The storm had not lessened as Ethan and Lyra moved across the rocky terrain. The jagged peaks of the moon cut strange shadows under the distant lights of the outpost they were heading for. Ethan could see faint glimmers of the patrolling ships, still searching, their searchlights sweeping over the craters like hungry predators. He knew they had to move carefully or they would be found. Lyra stayed close to him, her small hands gripping his arm. She no longer wept, but her body was tense, every movement cautious. Ethan could sense her fear, but also her trust. That trust felt heavy with responsibility. Every step he took, he reminded himself that failing her wasn't an option. "Ethan, why are you helping me?" she whispered. Her voice was quiet, almost afraid to carry. "Because I can," he replied simply. "Because you don't deserve to be hunted like this. Because it's the right thing." She said nothing after that, but he could feel her listening, absorbing his words. They walked for what seemed like hours, slipping through shadows, hiding in craters, and avoiding the patrol lights. Ethan had learned to read the storm and the terrain, moving like he had done this before, though in truth he hadn't. It was all instinct, the kind that came from living alone in dangerous, quiet places for years. Finally, they reached the edge of a cliff overlooking a valley where a small abandoned cargo facility lay. Ethan motioned for Lyra to stay low. "We can rest there for a little while. We need to plan our next move." Lyra nodded, and together they descended cautiously. The cargo facility was in ruins, but the walls offered some shelter from the relentless storm. Ethan helped Lyra inside and she collapsed onto the ground, exhaustion overtaking her. "You need to rest," he said. "I'll keep watch. Nobody's coming here tonight if we're smart about it." Lyra's glowing blue eyes met his. I don't know how to thank you," she said. "You don't have to," Ethan replied. "Just stay alive. That's enough for now." They settled in as best they could, Lyra curling on a metal platform while Ethan kept the small flashlight scanning the surrounding area. The storm battered the facility, and for a moment it felt like the world had shrunk to just the two of them. After a while, Lyra finally began to speak, hesitantly, as if testing the waters. "Ethan, I need you to understand why they are after me. It is bigger than anything you have known." Ethan nodded, signaling her to continue. "I am not just anyone," she said softly. "I am the daughter of a ruling family in my home system, a family that holds influence over many worlds. They wanted to use me, to start a war." She flinched, lowering her eyes. "If I were returned, countless lives would be at risk. My people, my friends, everyone could suffer." Ethan felt a chill. The weight of her words settled on him. This was no mere escape from punishment. This was survival against political forces that could ripple across the galaxy. "You mean, they want to force you into something, and if you resist—" He trailed off. "They would take everything," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "I could not allow it. That is why I ran. Why I came here." Ethan took a deep breath. Protecting her was no longer just about compassion. It was about responsibility. Every instinct in him told him this was far bigger than he could handle alone. But abandoning her was not an option. "We need a plan," he said. "If we just keep running, they will catch us eventually." Lyra nodded, her fingers brushing the blanket around her shoulders. "There is a ship nearby, one I can pilot, but it is risky. They will be watching the docks closely. If we leave openly, they will find us instantly." Ethan frowned. "How risky?" "They use sensors that can detect life signs from long distances," she said. "But there is a hidden maintenance path, a tunnel system. It leads to the outskirts of the docks. I can get us out if we move carefully, but we have no room for mistakes." Ethan looked at her, seeing determination mixed with fear. "Then we do it. We take the tunnel. Together." Lyra hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Together. The storm outside was relentless as they moved toward the hidden entrance. The tunnel was dark and narrow, the walls slick with condensation from the storm. Ethan kept the flashlight ahead, scanning constantly. Lyra followed closely, whispering directions in her alien tongue which Ethan's translator struggled to keep up with. Hours passed in tense silence. They could hear the faint hum of patrol, ships overhead, and the distant rumble of the storm above them. Every step felt precarious, every sound amplified in the narrow tunnel. Ethan's heart pounded with both fear and anticipation. He knew that if they were caught now, there would be no escape. Finally, they emerged near the outskirts of the docking area. The night was clearer here, and the storm had lessened slightly. Lyra pointed to a cargo ship parked among other freighters, partially shielded by shipping containers. "That is our chance," she whispered. Ethan approached cautiously. "Can you get us both in?" "I can," she said. "But we need to move fast." They slipped across the ground, keeping low, and reached the ship. Lyra quickly accessed the control panel and opened the cargo bay. Ethan followed her inside, helping her secure the doors behind them. The interior was cramped but functional, enough to get them off the moon. Lyra settled in at the controls. "We can leave, but we must go through hyperspace immediately. They will follow if we give them time to track us." Ethan sat beside her, trying to steady his nerves. "Do you know the route?" "Yes," she said, her hands flying over the console. "But it will be dangerous. Hyperspace jumps at this speed with a cargo ship this size can tear the hull if not precise." Ethan nodded. "Then let's do it." With a low hum, the engines roared to life. Lights flickered across the dashboard as Lyra guided the ship through the maze of containers. Ethan kept watch, scanning the horizon for patrol ships. As they cleared the last obstacles, a massive enemy flagship descended, blocking their path to open space. Lyra froze, her hands gripping the controls. They are waiting for us," she whispered. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. "We can still do this, trust me." She nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "I trust you, Ethan." With that, she initiated the hyperspace sequence. The ship shook violently, lights flickering, alarms sounding. Ethan braced himself as the stars outside stretched into streaks of light. The hum of the engines grew deafening. He could feel the tension in the metal beneath them as the jump began. For a moment, it felt as if the ship was being pulled apart. Ethan held on tightly to a support beam, heart racing. Lyra's hands flew across the controls, precise and confident despite her fear. The stars outside blurred into a tunnel of light. Then, suddenly, everything went silent. When they emerged, the ship floated in open space, far from the patrols. Ethan exhaled deeply, relief washing over him. Lyra slumped in her seat, her hand still on the console. "We made it," Ethan said, smiling despite the tension. Lyra looked at him, tears of relief glimmering in her eyes. "You saved me," she said softly. I thought I would never escape." Ethan shook his head. "No. We saved each other. You trusted me, and I trusted you. That's what matters." She smiled faintly, the first real smile he had seen since their encounter. For the first time, she seemed free from the weight of fear that had consumed her. They spent the next hours navigating through uncharted space, avoiding known patrol routes and alien checkpoints. Lyra explained bits of her world, her family, and the conflict she had escaped. Ethan listened intently, learning more about a galaxy filled with political intrigue, alliances, and wars that he had only read about in old history logs. Despite the danger, a bond grew between them, one built not on romance but on trust, respect, and shared survival. Ethan realized that this was more than just protecting a fugitive. This was about standing for what was right in a universe that often rewarded power over justice. As the distant stars of a new system appeared on the horizon, Ethan felt a quiet sense of hope. Lyra would not be alone anymore, and though the galaxy was vast, dangerous, and unpredictable, he knew one thing for certain: they would face it together. And as Lyra looked at him, the fear in her eyes replaced by something softer, Ethan understood that their story was only just beginning. The storm they had escaped was not over. Not yet. But for now, in the silent expanse of space, they were free. And that was enough to keep hope alive. They would need to fight, to hide, and perhaps to lead others to safety. But together they had survived what no one else could. And in the vast darkness of the universe, that was a light neither of them would let fade.